Okay, so good day to all of my students. So this is basically a lecture on, it's not a lecture, it's basically a review on object-oriented programming and creating your own class and programming too. So we already have encountered this in our programming too. We have created classes on our own, and we have identified and described what are included in the class. So basically, I will make it fast. Hindi ko siya in-depth discussion. So please do review this slide, and if you still have your previous exercises, so that would be good. If not, then you do practice. Okay, so we'll start with about object-oriented programming. Okay, so basically this is the objectives of the lesson. I'll not go on to the scope. I'll just proceed until lang sa methods. Okay, and then self-learning na lang yung scope, primitive data types, etc. Okay, so we all know that object-oriented programming revolves around objects, and Java programming basically is an object-oriented programming approach. And yung Java programming, the basic element niya ng language is to implement objects. Okay, and these objects are characterized by their properties and behaviors. So example of objects in real world scenario is that we have a car, and objects represents, this is a software model of the real world representation. So example of objects would be car, and then there, as I mentioned earlier, it is characterized by properties and behavior. So in its properties, it do have type of transmission, manufacturer, and color. So when we say properties, these are basically parang attributes niya. Okay, anong color niya, anong brand, anong type ng transmission, kung kung human ito, anong color ng skin, anong color ng hair, etc. So properties needs to be assigned with a value, and in car object, these are its properties. When we say behavior, it's how the object behaves, or how the object reacts if it is triggered with a certain event. So the behavior or the methods of the car is to turn or turning, and then braking and accelerating. And then just explore the other example, which is lion. So objects in the physical world, it can be modeled in programming using the properties. Sa programming, we will identify it as data, and behaviors as methods. In object-oriented programming, we do have a terminology that is called encapsulation. So basically, we encapsulate specific properties and behavior and hide them so that it will not be accidentally be changed. Okay? So by definition, encapsulation is the method of hiding certain elements of the implementation of a certain class. So we place parang border around the properties and around the behaviors of our objects, so we can prevent our programs from having any side effects. Ano lang ko para binigay siya. Can you still hear me? Ano lang maglain lang siya. Anyways, we can prevent our programs from having different side effects, or in the programs na accidentally ma-change yung properties. Let's say for example, yung sa car class or car object, ang color niya is red, and then the other program, pag hindi siya naka-encapsulate, it will be accidentally be changed into, let's say, white. Okay, yung color. Class can be thought of as a template, a prototype, or a blueprint of an object. Okay, so basically it is the fundamental structure in object-oriented programming. So there are two types of class members. So these are the fields and these are the methods. So when we say fields, these are basically the properties or the attributes. Yung sinabi ko kanina, di ba, that the objects do have the properties. So the class is basically the template of an object. Kumbaga, in let's say subdivision, we do have a blueprint of the house, and basically the objects are the parang actual house na. Okay, so the blueprint is the classes, and then the objects are the house. So the objects do have the properties or the attributes and the behaviors, and then when we define it in the class, we call it as fields and methods. Okay, let's continue. So basically, as I said earlier, that objects is a instantiation or any an instance of a class. Okay, so we do have a class, which is a definition of the objects and parang structure of the objects, and then we create objects coming based from the definition or description we define in the class. So by definition, object is composed of the data, which we call it as properties or attributes, which are variables describing the essential characteristics of the object. Okay, so meron siyang data, and these are basically the characteristics or attributes of the object. So yung kanina, the cart object, the properties there are the ano nga yun, the color, etc. Okay. Right, and then it also consists of methods, okay, that describes how the objects behaves. So methods are basically you call methods on each object, and these methods will be executed once it is called. So we do have a separate discussion on methods later. So to differentiate classes and objects, so let us discuss this example. We do have a car class here. So car class is defined by its fields and methods. So these are the fields: plate number, color, manufacturer, current, speed. The fields are just variables. Okay, it's similar to variables. Okay. And then we have methods, which are accelerate, turn, and brake. We do have here the object car A and then object car B. So as you notice, it do have a different what you call this, a different value or on each attribute. So each object car A do have its attributes in plate number, it's ABC111, and it's different with object car B. Okay, but the fields that they are referred to are the same, okay, which is based on the car class. So as I have mentioned earlier, objects are instance of whatever have been defined in the car class fields, and the methods are also the same with across the different objects that are created based on the methods that were defined in car class. So what is the benefit of using classes? So you don't have any wala kayong magagawa but to basically use classes, because Java, it revolves around classes and objects. So it basically provides reusability. You can create as many objects as you want, as long as you have define the classes, fields, and methods, and you can, as I've mentioned, you can create many objects over and over again. So each classes consists of the variables, the methods, and the variables do have it's the instance variables and the class variables. So when we say instance variables, these are basically each objects have different value on each objects for the fields that is assigned to. Let's say, for example, for the color, for the manufacturer, it has different values. Instance methods, these are the behaviors of the classes. And then class variables, these are variables that are that belong to the whole class, and you can call only class variables using its class name, not with the object name. So we'll have an example later. Okay, so static member variable. So you can only assign static class variables with the keyword static. Okay, so this is an example. I want you to analyze this example that has included the class variable. Okay, so I don't need to further discuss it. Okay, when we instantiate a class, we basically use the new keyword. Okay, so we already have utilized the new keyword in instantiating different classes. We do have instantiated classes for wait a minute, I'll stop. So we already have used a new keyword in instantiating a class by creating objects, especially when we input values, or when we use user input. Okay, hindi ko lang ma-remember kung anong ginamit natin last time. I'll just review what was the class that we have used in programming 1 and 2. Was it input stream reader or the other one? Okay. All right. I need to see it. Ano yung ginamit natin? Nakalimutan ko eh. Data input. Scanner. Did we use scanner class? I believe so. We did use scanner. Okay. I do hope that I am mistaken. If we really did use scanner, I can remember. Anyways, okay. I need to verify if we really did use scanner. Okay. I'm really sorry. I really can't remember what happened. Okay. MKB CC. Ito ba yun? Wala akong mga... Okay. Wala kasi. I'll just try to ask you if we use scanner or input stream reader. Okay, let's continue. The new operator, as I said, will allocate memory to the object and basically returns a reference of that memory location to you. So you don't need to really understand what are those memory allocation. what we need to understand is the new operator is used to instantiate objects of a given class. Okay, the constructor is a method where you place all the initializations. It has the same name as the class. Okay, so we create constructor because when we instantiate objects, it basically call the constructor of the class. So whatever initializations that you have defined there will be executed. And methods, this is included as member of the class. Method is a separate piece of code that can be called by a main program or any other method to perform some specific function. So the following are the characteristics of method. So I want you to remember this. First is it can return one or no values at all. It may accept as many parameters it needs or no parameter at all. So again, pwede siya walang parameter or it can have one or no return values. It may accept as many parameters as needed or no parameter. And after the method is finished execution, the codes inside the body, it goes back to the method kung asa siya na-call. Let's say, for example, it was called in the main method. So once the, let's say, print method will execute its statements, it will go back to the program flow, logic flow of the main method. Okay, you just read why you need to use methods. Okay, so just please read it and pause and read. So to illustrate how to call methods, we just need to write the dot. Okay, dot. And then we already have discussed different methods in our string class discussion in programming too. So we do have char@. As you notice, char@ will need to accept a parameter that is an integer-based parameter, and it will need to return a character. Okay, and then we do also have an equals ignore case method that will need to accept a string value and will return a boolean value. Okay. So when we call an instance variable method, we just use the dot to call the method. Okay. We do have two types of to pass the value. Okay, so we do have pass by value. It occurs when the method basically makes a copy of a value of the variable that is passed to the method, and the method cannot accidentally modify the original argument. So even it modifies the parameters during calculations. Also, this is the example of the pass by value. So please take note that all primitive data types can only pass pass by value lang sila, and it will really copy what is the value of the pass na variable. Okay. So in this example, we do have an integer type variable I equals to 10, and then system.out.println I, and then it will call method test and pass I to method test. So we do have a created method here. This is a static method. When we say static method, it belongs to the class, and it can only be called by its class name or within the class. So, okay, we do have a I want to doodle. I want to doodle. kasi wala naman siya. Ayun na lang. Anyway, so let's proceed. So the value of I is 10, and then we print here the value of I. So basically when we print that, it will display 10, and then we will call now the method test here. So the value of I will be copied here, which is I represents 10, and then it will call the method. So meron siya arrow. So yung I will be copied to the parameter na J, which is int J. And then inside here, we change the value of J, which is equal to 33. Now the question is, when we, diba sabi ko kanina, when the method will finish execution, it will go back to the method that is call it, which is the main method. So test method is called, and then it will go back to the main method. Ayan. Okay. So it will go back here, and then it will print the value of I. Since this is a pass by value, it will not change the value of I. So when we system that out at println, when we display the value of I here, it will print what? It will print the value of 10. Okay? Next is parameter passing pass by reference. So when a pass by reference occurs, the reference to an object is passed to the calling method. So yung pass by value, the value is copied to the parameter that is that receives the value. In pass by reference, the reference to an object is passed to the calling object. So this means that the method makes a copy of the reference of the variable passed to the method. So that means when it copy the reference, when there are changes to the reference, so all reference of the variable that is being passed is being changed. So this is illustrated in this example. Public static void main, create an array of integers. So int ages 10, 11, 12. So print array values for int I equals to 0. Okay, so in here, we do have an array here which is ages, and then it is being passed to this test na method. So it is received by the parameter ARR. So just imagine lang, kasi I don't have any whiteboard to record on. Anyways, just imagine that the ARR array here is being changed into different values. And then once it is being changed, the method ended its execution, it will go back to the method that called it, which is the main method. And then it will print the values again. Now in this case, since the pass method is a reference, pass by reference, so whatever changes in the method will be changed also in the ages na array. Okay? So this is just a representation. As you notice in the main method, it points to the array location, and then ARR method also points to the array location. So whatever changes here will also reflect to the ages na array. So kung tayo sa ARR, it will change 10 into 20. So when we go back to the main method, it will refer to 20 na, hindi na 10. Okay? Static methods, these are methods that can be invoked without instantiating a class. Okay? So that means you don't need to call it, or you must not call it using the object name. You call it with the class name. Okay? So you can basically call it by using the class name and then that static method, and if there is parameter, then you can include a parameter, but that is optional. So these are just example of the static methods, so just analyze and read. Okay, so I won't be discussing this anymore. So that is basically our part 1 of our discussion of the object-oriented programming. So learning na itong mga other topics. Okay?